Welcome back to Mages and Murderdads. This is a little bit of a weird one. Oh, I'm Cameron, by the way.
I'm Danny. This is weird. It's weird enough that I had to ask you what's going on, and you haven't even explained it. You're gonna off the cuff here.
I'm gonna do it live. So here's the deal. What you're about to listen to is or what you're listening to right now, I guess, is episode 74 of Mages and Murderdads. Now, way back, I'm gonna look here and see when we did it. When did we do this? Let me check the properties of my file. Back in January. So this is like 6 months ago. Almost 7 months ago. Back in January, we recorded the last episode of Disco Elysium of our playthrough, and this was a kind of a, what do you call it? Like a final thoughts.
Yeah,
episode.
it was we're done with the game. What's our in sum total, experience?
Vibe. And then but we knew that the final cut was going to come out back in January. We knew it was going to come out, but it was not out yet. And so we decided, hey, let's what we'll do here is we'll record our kind of thoughts, and then sometime between when the final cut comes out and when the season is done, we'll just independently play the game again, beep bop bop, zip through it, and then we'll compare the final cut to the experience that we had. And we'll do a whole other episode, and that would be episode 75, and then that would kind of make it all come together.
Mm-hmm.
We have both played. I didn't play through all of the final cut. I played about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and you suggested this, but there's not enough different in the final cut
To warrant a full episode.
Yeah, we don't have an hours of stuff to talk about. So, let's talk about the what. Oh, okay. Well, so you're listening to this, so obviously we have something to say. So what we're going to do here is we're going to talk for about 20 minutes or so, a little more, a little less, somewhere in that realm. We're going to talk for about 20 minutes about Final Cut stuff, and then I will seamlessly transition us into the original episode 10, episode 74, and you can hear our whole recap episode that we did back in January. So that's basically the thing. So this is like a little bit of a pre-roll, and when you hear us promising to do a Final Cut episode in the proper episode 74 we did...
You've already experienced it.
You have. The magic of time travel. So you get both. And so all the times that you hear us saying things like, maybe that'll change in the Final Cut, no, it doesn't.
That's not to bury the lead here, but yeah, so biggest difference with Final Cut, voice acting. Right or wrong here?
Yeah, I would say kind of three big differences, one of which didn't really matter that much to me, but I can imagine it would. So, number one, voice acting. Number two, what have been called political vision quests, which is really funny. I believe in our recap episode, we basically said, there's no way they'll call them that in the final release. They have to call them something other than vision quests, because that's weird, and that feels weird. And that's got a lot of kind of racialized baggage behind it. Nope, they called it vision quests.
Wait, is it called Vision Quest in the game?
Yeah. That's what their official language is. I don't think it ever shows up anywhere, but the vision quests are like the way they were sold on Steam and the way that they're talked about in
the promotional
language.
materials, not in the in game, but
but there's no reference to them as a group of stuff in the game period. So they're not labeled that in the game, but that is the official terminology. So that, and then I think there's fast travel, right?
I have no idea. Is there fast travel?
I don't. Well, as I was walking around in the new stuff, it kept giving me like new travel location or new location. Oh, let me. So, but it didn't come up, so I didn't look. Let me say, Final Cut, Disco Elysium, fast travel. Let's see if it exists. Let's see. Everyone's confused about how to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can.
Okay, but it's so confusing. I did not even catch that.
Yeah, I just saw it as I was walking around in the Final Cut. It would say, like, you found this place, you found this place, you found this place. But I didn't try to play with it or anything.
That actually would be pretty nice.
Yeah, well, it's kind of this, like, backwards and forwards. And I don't know one way or the other which one is better. Because on one hand, yes. On the other hand, I feel like walking around this little zone is like kind of a big chunk of the game.
Sure.
But I kind of, once you do it 2 or 3 times, what else are you going to get?
Yeah, I don't think that there is, unless there are more instances than I can think of like stuff that happens between the boardwalk and the whirling in rags.
Yeah, there's really not.
You do that twice, you've seen it. And you end up having to do that more than a couple times.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So the major 2 things are these political quests and the voice acting. So I played it for, like I said, about an hour and a half, 2 hours, somewhere in the zone there. And what did you think about I think you played about the same amount, right?
I played a little bit more. I like kind of did some speed run strats and really got weird and experimental and was disregarding a lot of the narrative that I've already seen because I've played it 2 full times now. I like talk to Ivart and Joyce before even looking at the corpse. It's like, I really got weird. I think that the same issue is I exhausted virtually every side quest on the first day. So I don't know what is waiting for me on the second day, but I didn't even make it to day 2. I just did all of that stuff. And
well,
then
let me tell you,
I want to add one thing. And then I knew that I wanted to angle for one of the political quests, but the way I built my character made it very difficult to meet the light bending guy, the mega rich light bending guy, which is necessary, I think, for the ultra liberal political vision quest.
So they something interesting that I figured out, kind of googling around. So what happened? I did both. Well, let's talk about voice acting first.
Sure.
What do you think about it? Good, bad?
It's
neutral?
Fine. I don't think that it took anything away from my play experience. If it were my first playthrough, I might have listened to it more intently. But I think at the point where you've played it a couple times, hearing it doesn't make that big of a difference. I think they've got a fully kind of professional voice acting roster at this point. There were a lot of volunteers before.
Well, I don't know if they're a volunteer. I think everyone got paid, but actually,
that's not my understanding. Actually,
okay. Everyone just volunteered and did it. Yeah, it's interesting. So we talked a little bit about how some kind of political podcasters are kind of dotted throughout that, and I think they're all gone in this final version.
That's my understanding too.
So that's interesting.
The voice acting seemed fine. There were a couple of real tonal shifts in a few characters. The one that I got was Si Ling, who had more of, and I think this was discussed in either our Discord or the comments about my evaluation of an accent as New York versus Brooklyn versus a New Jersey accent. I don't know what the official call was, but it sounded like a New Jersey. I guess.
But yeah, sure.
But it is no longer that accent. It is very much they are aiming for, this is maybe a Southeast Asian accent or something like that.
Okay.
So a couple of differences that's really doing different world building, but otherwise nothing else that affects the way I experience the game. What about you?
Well, I don't like it. I just don't like it. I don't like.
You don't like full voice acting in games. Period. Is my understanding.
Basically, yeah, that's basically the case. I just read so much more quickly, and I feel like voice acting really drags me down because I feel this double emotion all the time. On one hand, I want to hear the line reading, right? Because I think that actually does matter. The way that because the actor's choice here has been vetted by a voice acting director and then the design team, or at least some people who are in charge have thumbs up, right? Mm-hmm. So the way the line is read in the final performance is a verified performance. So the way that, for example, you could read irony or you could read sarcasm into just text by itself, you get this additional kind of layer of content, essentially, for lack of a better word, of intent. With how the line is supposed to be taken and how it's in conversation with other lines. So I'm in this tension with this is part of what's happening and this is part of the game and the way we need to think about the game and the way that it's kind of doing the things that it does. On the other hand, I'm waiting because I read the text so much faster than I listen to the thing. So this is why I don't like audiobooks as well. I have a whole problem with this kind of thing.
It seems like for a full voice acted game to work for you, it can't be this mode where a third of the screen is a text box. It needs to be like, okay, it's written, but only as captions, and otherwise it is just like voice acted, and there might be like a mocapped person or, an animated person there like giving the line, but you're only given one line of text at a time, so you can't read ahead.
Yeah, I do way better that way, for sure. Like, I absolutely do way better that way. So there's just this kind of tension there, and that's all on me. I don't blame the game for that. I certainly think that if you're playing this on like a platform, if you haven't spent half of your life sitting there and looking at text on the screen in these kinds of RPGs, I think the voice acting's really convenient and awesome. I imagine if I were playing this for the first time and like sitting in my living room and playing on a console, that the voice acting would be awesome because it just kind of, the mode of delivery there would matter a lot more than for me sitting down playing an RPG and like hammering through the dialogue, because there's a lot here and I can read it really quickly. So anyway, I don't think that's anyone's fault. I think it's all on me. I think that if it's a benefit for you and you like it, then good. And as always, I could just turn it off. It's on me if I were playing the game normally and not to talk about it.
Is that an option?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe it's in the options.
So neutral, I think, is our estimate here.
Yeah, I don't think one way or the other. This is more just like, do we like it, as opposed to is it good or bad? I think it's undeniably good.
Sure.
In the broad sense. But giving people more options is always a good idea. I will say I don't like the way that I think the narrator does a pretty good job, like this kind of new narrating actor who reads all the narratorial lines. I actually don't like the way that they perform the skills talking to one another, though, because I think half of the skills sound like huge assholes. It's like this sarcastic kind of like, I don't know. I don't like the performance of the skills at all. And maybe I would like it more if I played through the whole game and I got a better feel for it. But for the most part, what I liked about the skills is just text, is that I could look at the way that the skills, how they addressed other things in the world and like what they chose to focus on. And that's how I understood what the skill was like interested in, or its personality, I guess. Right.
Yeah.
So like, empathy is about this kind of connective potential, and it's because it kept going back to connective potential that I was like, okay, that's what empathy is doing, or endurance kind of becomes the voice of fascism a little bit, and endurance stands in and begins talking that way. Or Inland Empire is kind of bypassing into the world and is always looking behind things, and it's because it keeps talking about the kind of wheels behind the world that we understand how it works. They all get their own kind of vocal tones now, though, and
is it a different voice actor for like groups of them?
I don't think so. They all sounded to be the same person to me. Maybe that's not the case, but I played through 2 of the vision quests here, and they were all kind of the same. I think they're all the same voice actor, kind of doing a little bit of a different performance. But like Inland Empire, for example, which has this kind of expansive vibe to it, I think, just purely in text, almost comes off as like naive or like a conspiracy theorist in the vocal performance, and that just didn't jive with what I thought the actual text was doing. And again, that's an actor's choice, and an actor can choose to perform something however they wanted. But I actually thought that's the only place in the voice acting where I thought that I was actually kind of losing something that was really beneficial to me, is that I had to learn how I thought about the skills by just reading them in text. And the voice acting performance here actually was kind of telling me how I feel like it was setting standards for how I was supposed to think about them, and not really giving me as much, reflective capability.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, didn't really have thoughts one way or the other on that one.
Yeah, and that's only, like I said, that's based on a couple hours of play. Maybe I wouldn't feel that way if I played through the whole game again, but I cannot see myself maybe ever doing that again, to be frank.
And I think that that's worth saying, is that perhaps more than any other game we've played, aside from personally Torment: Tides of Numenera.
Yeah.
I don't think I think that a second playthrough of Torment might be more pleasant than a third playthrough of this game. Mm-hmm. I think this game is really good the first time you play it. I think it's still pretty good the second time you play it, if there's half a year between your first and your second. But the way we've played it, I think highlights some of its weaknesses vis-a-vis replayability. It's a mystery ultimately, and that angle just is not going to work on subsequent plays. So I think we've both experienced that. We've both kind of said, yeah, this, and this is always a risk when you do like a deep dive podcast on a piece of media. You might come out on the other side with a different feeling about it.
Yeah, well, and that's fine. I mean, I part of my feelings about this too, not having anything to do with like quote unquote replayability or even the amount of content in the game. Like I think the game is an excellent one shot through it.
Yeah,
I think it's awesome. I think that works, and whatever my reservations are about it, you'll hear a lot of those in the kind of final episode that's about to come in here in just a minute. But whatever those are, I think that like the first time sitting down and playing the game, it made me have a lot of thoughts and made me have a lot of feelings. And even if I didn't agree with every move it made or didn't think every move was perhaps justified or worth all the effort to go through it, or like worth hearing Kuno call me all kinds of awful names, just to get down to like the gritty business of what Kuno's about. Even if I don't think that works, I think Disco Elysium does enough to justify going through it for myself at least one time and seeing what was up. And I think it worked out great for this season of Mages and Murderdads. I think it gave us a lot to talk about and think about, but I can't see. Yeah, we'll probably never talk about it again.
Yeah.
But these political vision quests. So did you watch video of any of them or anything like that?
I did. So after I realized, oh my gosh, I need a high rhetoric, and I built my character in a way that didn't allow me to do that. I watched I think all of the videos. No, I didn't watch the moralist video, but I watched the ultra liberal and the other two, and the communist and the fascist. So there's 4 big political vision quests, and the way it works mechanically is in the same way that you have a capotype and a aspect of yourself can interject after a conversation and say, hey, I'm recognizing this capotype in you, and you can opt in. In the same way that works on night 3, if you have basically checked enough boxes, if you've chosen enough dialogue options that indicate one of those big 4 ideologies, you will have a dream. And then when you wake up, you have an opportunity to opt in to this political vision quest, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. It's really easy to see whether you're hitting those marks for some of the political vision quests, because, for example, ultra liberal, there is a thought cabinet that you can have called indirect taxation, which says every time you pick an ultra liberal dialogue line, you get a real. Mm-hmm. And I think that for the fascist thought cabinet, every time you say a fascist thing, you take a morale point of damage, something like that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you take 1 morale.
Yeah, so those are the options that the game is keeping track of, and yeah, so the political vision quest can be started as soon as day 4. So you actually did it. You actually played through it.
Yeah, I loaded a save that was right at the end of day 3, mm-hmm. and then started them both. I said a minute ago I played them both. I played one, and then I got, I guess, a third of the way through the other. Mm-hmm. I played the communist one, and then I started the fascist one, but I was locked out of actually completing it somehow.
Yeah.
It's a little bit tricky to do. I think these are actually much more tricky than basically any other quest in the game.
I think that these are some of the only checks. So I think before this, and I might be wrong actually. I'm gonna wind that back a little bit.
Okay.
I can't remember any checks in the game that had a difficulty higher than legendary. Off the top of my head. All of these quests, I'm pretty sure, have at least one check that is a tier higher than legendary in difficulty. They have like godly difficulty.
Yep.
So yeah, your character does need to be min-maxed towards the quest or have the exact right equipment and drugs in order to accomplish them.
Yeah, and I didn't complete, the communist one because I didn't make the godly check. So there's a little bit more after that.
But I think we've both seen the videos of the full completion of these quests.
Yeah. Well, the fascist one I didn't even get that far. So the first one I tried, I loaded my save to do the fascist one, and my skill says, "Hey, you need to find some other people who want to turn back time." And so I said, okay. And so then I went and talked to all the people who you can talk to who are fascists. And so I talked to the racist lorry driver, and my fascist conversation eventually got to the point that, like, ultimately this is a problem. The reason the racist lorry driver, the reason he is the way he is because he, like, can't compete in the sexual universe of the world that we live in. You know, he like feels like he can't compete for mates, essentially, because he's like got a little bit of a belly, and so it's like, ha ha ha. It's like some real JD Vance shit, right? Of like, ha ha ha, we are able to figure out exactly the way the world is by making some wild suppositions about the way human beings psychologically interact with the world.
No, and I think that just from I don't mean to interrupt your flow, but I looked at the end of the fascist quest, and it is very much like the last stuff you do is very much like psychosexual. Like,
yeah, 100%. So that's where I got you. I went and talked to Measurehead, and he was like, "Hey, you need to talk to someone and really understand how reality works." That loops you in to the Joyce Messier get a reality lowdown thing. But I had not done the prerequisite thing to get the reality lowdown, which I think was a conversation with Claire. So I just didn't do it. And so I was kind of locked, and I was like, all right, well, I can spend another half hour doing this, or I can just watch the video. And so I just watched the video. But yeah, the end of the fascist quest is you have an extremely long conversation with Measurehead where he kind of like lays out the world for you and the way it works. And basically what he ends up saying is that everything is just, I mean, this is some real summary. It really is like 20 minutes of conversation. But the basic gist of it is that all this is horse shit. And it's kind of about the competition for the ability to reproduce in the world. And outside, he's better than you because you like hang out in the little like union office there and chat. And he's like, outside in the world, we're competitors, but here I'm going to like let you know what's up. And he basically says that like self-annihilation and procreation are the only thing that matters. And that's some real shortcutting, but that's the kind of thing. And so you can push on it. And he says, yeah, if you're curious about true, absolute turning back time and making things right in the world, just go jump into the pail and destroy yourself, because that's where it's at. But for everyone else, we have to keep going, and we have to keep like spreading and maneuvering in the world. And that's how it happens. And, so there's this kind of competitive Darwinian universe out there. So it's actually just kind of the same shit that he's been saying this whole time. I don't actually think very much of that is new based on when I'm reading through.
No, and as a matter of fact, I talked about we talked about kind of some of the weird angles of Measurehead and the fact that when you meet him, he's surrounded by these groupies.
Yeah, they called me Hick Dick in this thing. So yeah, that's like tripled down on you.
Yeah, exactly. So this is all set up before. I felt the same way with the ultra liberal quest line, which I think that off air were like reading some of the thought cabinets, and you even noted, yeah, I don't think I would read this thought cabinet text on the show. It was like relatively offensive. And so the ultra liberal thing, it's all about hustling and grinding, and making money, and it is a arc of basically buying a piece of art that Cindy the Skull makes, selling it to the mega rich light bending guy for a stock certificate of like an arbitrary amount of shares, and you're on your screen, it literally, you get a new box in addition to your real that says net worth, and it's some, hundreds of thousands of real on your net worth. And you can then hire Idiot Doom Spiral, who used to work in business as like an assistant. And yeah, it kind of just ends with you rebranding the central statue of the previous king, in kind of like an art piece way. And yeah, there's a lot more, and I think both of us missed kind of the critique of the art world that this game had to offer on our first playthroughs, but that's definitely like a thing you can talk about and listen to and lean into.
I didn't miss it. We just never talked about it on the show. But yeah, that's where the statue comes from. It was put together by artists who were like ironically putting it back up as like a postmodern critique, blah, 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 that kind of thing.
And I think that at the end, after this quest, you rebrand it and you have some weird scaffolding around it, and there's like a big sign that says, "The pale will eat all," or something along those lines. And yeah, so it's interesting because both of the videos I've watched, there's kind of like little supplemental things that you can experience. And one thing that I think neither of us experienced, which is the final dream that you can have with Dolores Day, the stand-in for your ex.
Yeah, everyone was very astonished by that in the final episode. They're like, neither of you slept? And I was like, no.
Yeah, that would never occur to me in playing a serious game, in playing that game the way I wanted to play it. But yeah, apparently it just offers you some extra dialogue options. But I am worth so much more money than whoever you're seeing is. It does nothing. So not too much there. What about the communist one?
You go and you find out. You got to do a little detective, and you got to find some communists because they have a smell to them. And you eventually find out. You got to talk to Cindy the Skull. You got to talk to Call Me Mañana, and you find out that there's a communist cell. You go into the communist cell. By the way, this is where I figured out that you can pass time, because you have a hard time passing time with Kim in your party. You can open up your your folder. And read your own case files, and it will advance time. If you just get in that menu of looking at your case files and hit the space bar about 100 times, it will constantly scroll across your screen and will advance time for hours and hours and hours. So that's a fun little thing that I learned. But yeah, so because they meet at night, so you got to go in. Lo and behold, it's just two dudes who are there. They're the quote unquote communist cell, and they just read Mazovian materialist literature. They believe in inframaterialism, which is like pretty fun. It's an idea that communist crops or radical crops grow faster than other crops. And so the idea is like if you can get everything sufficiently on the ideological line, it will actually become more successful. And you can really feel the kind of poking fun at kind of both doctrinaire ideological communism here, and also to like the weird vestigial ways that communism, like mainline communism, is stuck around, right? It's like people who want to read books and, think that reading books is like maybe sufficient enough, and they like want to be ideologically correct and all of that kind of stuff. It's, a pretty sarcastic feeling, and I gotta be honest, it doesn't feel that much different. Some people have been really, I think, put off by the way that I've characterized what I feel like the political views of some of the moments in this game have been, right?
I have seen this on Twitter. I've seen this, and I've been thinking after I'm reading this, is like, wow, well, maybe we just need the final cut, and this will really frame kind of the content in this game, because it seems like other people are just experiencing it in a very different way.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe if I sat down and played the whole game again, it would radically change.
I think you get one shot. I don't think you get to do it again.
And but that's the thing, is that at the end of the day, whatever the developers believe, and I think this has been a slippage that I have made, a kind of jump and a leap that's made it easy to I don't know, to dismiss what I'm saying, and that's fine if you want to dismiss what I'm saying. I don't care. Whoever's listening to this, you're your own person. You can think whatever you want. We are two different people. We are all engaging with the game, and we're thinking about it, and that's fine. But it's really whatever the ideological or political intent or beliefs of the developers are. I have no idea what those are. But I will say, in the kind of the India, the communist ending really made me feel this too, that so many of the times when the situations that are presented, it seems like what we're meant to take away from, or what we are left to take away, not meant, because I don't know, but what the scenario in front of you gives, the end of it is just a big old shoulder shrug. Mm-hmm. Like, well, here's some stuff. I don't know, feel a way about it. The communists are just two incapable idiots who get in political fights about turnips or whatever. And I
think that there's some people find it emotionally affecting. Like, the one tiny bit of optimism that they feel is in the game is that the final scene in the communism bit, when they're stacking these matchboxes and this impossible shape holds itself for a few seconds before collapsing.
Yeah.
And the characters can alternatively say, oh, how disappointing, or oh, how amazing. I think that hits some people a particular way.
And I think that's a lot of the scenarios in the game, right? Like, even in the reality, the oppressive reality of what things are, there can be a glimmer of hope in the void. And I don't think anyone's wrong for feeling that way. And I think that's absolutely what the game, the way it's setting things up, right? Even in this crushing despair that is Revachol, there can be something else, right? There can be other things that can be felt, and there can be kind of hope in that void. And that's perfect. That's okay and perfectly fine. That's also, I feel about Disco Elysium the same way I feel about the end of True Detective Season 1. And the Disco Elysium developers call that out as an explicit reference. I feel like sometimes in this game, what is so clearly meant to be a glimmer of hope in the void feels unearned in some ways for me, and everyone doesn't have to feel this way, but it feels unearned in that I think that it feels false in the face of all the kind of crushing realism of the rest of it. And but that's just me. That's whatever. And I don't think that, despite all the ways that I've been critical and we have been critical of the game, or thought critically about it, or thought that it didn't work in some places, I think we have been equally full of praise for it working in other places. I don't think any of these political vision quests particularly work for me. The two that I looked at, I didn't look at the other two. They didn't particularly work for me, and I'm a little bit kind of astonished, because I've read a couple reviews of these things when the final cut came out, and I'm a little bit astonished the way that some people wrote about them, to be frank. I think that they are just a little bit more of Disco Elysium. I don't think that they are any different, and they just don't resonate for me. I actually think the game might be better without them. Maybe that's what I'm trying to work my way around.
Here's the thing. It is very easy to just play the game and not experience them.
That's what you were saying. Yeah.
And I was telling you this. I was like, I could play my version of Harry Dubois again and make the same choices. I would never get any of these, because my version of Harry Dubois was the superstar cop who did not care about politics. And you do have to care. You do have to select choices, even for, I think, the moralist perspective, you still have to make explicitly political statements, one way or the other. So yeah, you can. I think that it's really this medium's really hard to hard to talk about in some ways, because I think my playthrough with no phasmid conversation, no possibility for a vision quest, like I don't know. I think that it's really interesting to talk about what my experience was versus somebody else who got both of those things. And like,
yeah, I mean, I didn't really think about it at the time when we were playing through it, but you saying all that right now, your playthrough of the game is pretty emotionally hollow.
Oh, 100%. At the end, I am this absurd jerk, this incredibly destructive cop who completely fucked up the case, and it is so unmemorable, the end of the game. Like, the only thing was, like, apparently Kuno's going to be, like, a junior detective, and I guess they're taking me on, or maybe they aren't. But my last line is, "Oh, you're definitely going to take me back on." It's just, you know? And I guess I opted into that, but I felt like they were all choices provided to me that felt appropriate for the character that I was given. But could you imagine someone writing a review of the game based on their full playthrough, which was mine?
I think some people did. I mean, yeah. I think some people did do that, which is why this game, I think the game was, fairly, equally praised. But if you read the release reviews, the way it gets talked about and praised is very different. Right? For those kinds of people who played it a little bit differently. And I certainly saw a lot of this on social media. For the people who were playing review copies like I was or whatever. There were some pretty differing opinions, I would say. That once people, I think, gave it a second shot or like worked through it a little bit more or whatever, I think opinion evened out. But I think even the people who played the game in the way that you did and had that kind of experience, they at least praised the game for like, look at this big possibility space. Sure. It seems like they've done everything. And, we've played all these other games in its kind of pseudo genre and still way bigger. I think it's a cool game. I think Disco Elysium is overall rad. I'm glad that it exists. I think there are big gaps in it for me ultimately, and I don't think that those will ever be filled. Meaning that I think that the game is so focused on doing some things I just either kind of don't care about or think are maybe the wrong direction for what I would do or what I think is like, where I want to see this kind of game go, that I will never feel the way about it as the game's biggest fans feel about it. I think that's it. And I think that there's been a little bit of friction that I felt a little bit between that crowd and maybe particularly some of my opinions that have been on the show. That's okay. Look, we're all people who can think different things about the world. I think the game has, I don't think it's like a failure.
We all know
it's really interesting.
Harry went through a lot of stuff. Harry was rejected. Harry was finally accepted. And I'm not talking about Disco Elysium. I'm talking about the sponsor for the show, lest anyone forget, Harry and the Hendersons, the film.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. And please get back to us on Twitter. We'd love to do another initiative. We'd love to do some more projects.
Yeah, Amblin Entertainment, at Amblin, please get at me. I've got some great offers. Well, anyway, so I said we'd talk for about 20 minutes, and roughly double that time later, we're done. So next we'll be doing Icewind Dale. We recorded the first episode of Icewind Dale, 6 months ago?
Luckily, plot not quite as heavy as this one, so I think we're going to be able to pick it up just fine.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to remember what's happening.
No, the problem with you isn't remembering the plot. The problem with you is remembering the names of your 6 characters.
Yeah, I'm dreading that. But so what you're about to hear, let me tell you 2 things here real quick. What you're about to hear is our initial episode of reflection, like I said before. So just kind of big feelings. I think it's probably going to be something similar to what you just heard here, but much more in detail, that kind of thing. It's coming right after this. We'll be back in a few weeks. Give us a few weeks, but there'll be a little bit of a break between seasons, and then we'll be back with Icewind Dale. So I will kick it right over to us in the rest of this episode. Thanks for listening to our Final Cut opinions. Here are our base game final opinions.
Time travel. Whoa.
Welcome back to Mages and Murderdads, episode... I don't even know what episode this is.
It's episode 74.
I'm Cameron.
I'm Danny.
And this is our 10th episode on Disco Elysium. In the last episode, we finished the game. And I said, hold on. Hold your horses. So you were standing over there, and you had all your horses, and you were ready to let them go.
Mm-hmm.
And you were saying to me, hey, I'm letting these horses go. Here they go. And I said, Danny, don't do it. Danny, hold those horses.
I think, yeah, you were like, you can't release the horses.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably, and feel free to edit this out because you have total editorial control. Probably because you had landscaping to do or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was brandishing a revolver. And I was telling you, hold them horses.
Mm-hmm.
It's dangerous out here.
Mm-hmm. So I went back to the tavern, I guess.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, roll for perception.
All right.
Okay.
10.
Okay, there's nothing. Absolutely nothing. You see to your left an empty table with some leafy greens on it.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Can I discern if there's baby spinach in there?
Roll again. This is going to be I don't know, maybe an insight check.
Okay, 10.
Let's do it. You cannot know. You're radically. Hold on. Can you give me a D100?
Yeah, sure. 10.
You are radically ignorant when it comes to discerning the contents of any kind of salad.
Can I perform an insight check to determine how I even know what baby spinach is?
We're going to need a raw intelligence check on that one, I think,
Okay.
actually. Yeah.
10.
Can you give me that D100 one more time?
10.
You don't know what food is? You don't know... And you also... Oh, hold on, all right. You said 10?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking at... this is 9, 12. Hold on. It's right here. Okay, yeah. You don't know what a baby is, apparently? It just says on the chart you don't know what babies are. This is a excerpt from us playing the Disco Elysium board game.
Okay, yeah.
I'm glad
by
that you've all enjoyed
Hasbro,
it.
right?
Yes, by Hasbro.
Mm-hmm.
What if? Wouldn't that be great? Not Wizards of the Coast, but Hasbro.
Hasbro.
All right, well, we finished this game.
Clue or something, right?
Yeah, it's just like Clue. Anyone who's ever played Clue can discern from what we just talked about that is clearly an adaptation of Clue. Mm-hmm. You couldn't hear it, but I was opening and closing like a shitload of tiny envelopes.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think of this game? We've had a week to ruminate. We recorded the last couple episodes all in a whack a week ago, our time.
Was that last weekend?
It might have been. Was it? I don't know. Sometime before this very moment.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it was last weekend. And we said, you know what? Hold on. Let's give it a minute. Let's ruminate on it, and let's come back and have our kind of hashtag big take. So what'd you think?
The last kind of thought that I was dwelling with was this. I'll kind of give like a big sentence here.
Danny's big sentence.
Yeah, in the same way that there are some games that attempt to give the impression that there are a ton of different options and the game performs some sleight of hand to make it basically while you're playing it, it makes you feel like there are a lot of options, but there really aren't. You know the kind of game I'm talking about, right?
You mean like Dig Dug?
Sure. But also, there are a lot of kind of big box games that are all about quote unquote player choice. And when you actually look at the mechanics and kind of the waypoints and the plotting and the actual different outcomes, it's much more bottlenecked and railroady in reality than what the game makes you feel.
Yeah, there's kind of a branching and pinching.
Yes.
Right. So like things come out and they come back, and so I agree that lots of big RPGs. For example, the more recent Assassin's Creed Valhalla, right? I think you're right. That language of player choice, make the choice, role play in the world that you want to experience.
But it's a magic trick, and some are more successful than others.
Yeah, and by the nature of game design, it's always a magic trick in some ways, and some are better at selling the trick.
I think that this game is interesting because as I kind of think about my experience this time versus the first time, and as I look at some of the stuff that I have not yet experienced from like the wikis, this game does a strange inversion of it for me. In that, as I am playing it, the experience I have is kind of like it couldn't have ended up any other way. It felt like my encounter with Ruby felt like, this has to happen. I feel completely railroaded. To an extent, it felt like the shootout was like, well, this has to end this way. And I think that there is a mode in which there kind of like this overarching thought that the game is trying to convey, which is the effects of history and the inertia of history on the present that kind of play out in my experience of the game and choices. Because I do think that inversion has happened, where I think there are more options that this game actually has than what I feel while playing it. And it's because while I am playing it, I think that there is something about the stance of the game on history and on individual actions is like bleeding through to my experience of playing it. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the game often feels like it couldn't have ever happened any other way, like you're saying. And I think part of what makes that feel that way is that the designers of the game have thought a lot about what are the mechanisms that make player choice work. And traditionally that is choice, right? Like,
sure.
I am typing something into a parser, or I am clicking, a dialogue option, or I'm choosing to shoot this person or not shoot them, right? These are binary choices that then branch into other binary choices, blah, 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 blah. The Disco Elysium, the way that it has that, obviously, right? It has like branching choices that you can make in intentional ways. But then kind of behind that, or bracketed by that, or kind of subtending that system, is how you choose to build your character, right? Like how you choose to allocate your stat points in the thought cabinet, I was going to say catalog again, cabinet, or in the like skill system. That necessarily surfaces some options and submerges other options. And so I think part of the reason it feels like we're on this train and we're going the whole way with some limited options in the middle is that you just never see some options, right? You never see some possible pathways, and it's because of choices you made without even really knowing you made them.
Yes.
We're going to talk a little bit later about several different pieces or I don't know, pieces of criticism, I guess, that we've looked at or talked about or whatever.
We call
about
these takes now.
No, we don't. I refuse. You wrote reflections in the document.
It's true.
So we don't even call them takes. But that is really, if you watch, I'm going to put links to these in the video description, but if you watch Jacob Geller's video on Disco Elysium, that's basically kind of the angle that Jacob comes from, is that putting all your points in shivers, right, gives you a particular vision of this world. And so that's this kind of like background, almost background radiation choice, right? That then kind of echoes through the whole thing. So for me, I've played it, 2 times, I guess now, all the way through. And you're always on a bullet train, but you've made choices about what bullet train to get on, is how it kind of feels. I don't know. I mean, what are some of the other ways that could go with Ruby? I think we basically had we did have the exact same outcome.
There are 2 possibilities, basically.
She can run away as the other one?
Yeah. There is no possible way that you arrest Ruby. She either feels cornered and will commit suicide, or you can allow her to run away.
I'm pretty sure that in my first playthrough, I think I said this in the last episode, but I'm pretty sure that she ran away, or I let her go.
Yeah. The shootout has kind of a lot of permutations. It always becomes violent. But there's like one way where your necktie gets incinerated and you throw a Molotov cocktail at them.
That's what I've heard. I think I saw that in... I don't remember. Maybe when I was Googling around about when I was soft locked, I might have seen people talking about that. But I didn't look up how you get it.
Yeah.
But does that really change the scenario?
No. It doesn't. There's also just like in looking at some of the video essays, I suppose, that we examined for this episode. Like I saw a clip of, I saw like some footage of Noah Caldwell Gervais's footage where they were engaged in conversation with the religious figure Dolores Day.
Yeah.
And like
in person or on the phone?
In person.
Yeah, you can do it two different ways.
Yeah, so there are just all of these various little experiences that I was certainly never afforded in the game. And yet, when I finish my game, it just feels canon to me. It feels like, oh, that's the only way it could have gone.
Yeah, the Dolores Day stuff, as far as I can understand, this hasn't happened to me either time that I've played the game. Obviously, it didn't happen this time. But part of that comes from... let me tell a little story to get here. So the first time I finished the game, right? So I finished it, and then I was writing about it, kind of writing a review. And I finished it, and I was talking to another critic, and they were like, yeah, I just couldn't really get over, like, the weird gender stuff going on with Dolores Day. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I never encountered Dolores Day. What are you talking about? And so they started, like, telling me all this stuff that happened. I was like, what? And this is, like, during the review period, too. So it's, like, not, there's not a wiki for us to go look at, right? It's just comparison of stuff that's happening. So I believe, given my understanding of that conversation, I've never gone back to look it up, but my understanding is that if you constantly are thinking about your ex-wife and constantly thinking about your time before, there's this way that the game melds Dolores Day and this, like, ghostly woman figure from your life that keeps coming up. That I kept bringing that up during the show.
Yeah.
That, like, the game keeps trying to railroad you there. Well, if you follow that railroad down, you end up in this. The way this critic described it to me, a kind of very saccharine and overly nostalgic for the relationship kind of. Conversation where, like, your character's own attachment to a woman becomes self-same with, like, the Jesus of this world. And I think there's some overtones to that. They're a little bit weird, but I haven't played through it. I can't say one way or the other. I don't want to judge it, but that was certainly the vibe that they had out of it. But yeah.
Do you remember the first conversation we ever had about Disco Elysium?
Let's see. I'm trying to think. No,
I think it's recorded for posterity among like the good listeners.
Is that
who subscribe to the Patreon?
The chosen few,
self-chosen. But yeah, it was kind of like over this past summer. I played the game and we kind of talked about it on the Patreon cast, and I read your piece. I waited until I played the game to read your pieces because they're just chock full of spoilers.
Yeah.
And it was specifically your Vice piece, The Mysterious Magical End of Disco Elysium. Yeah, and we had an interesting conversation about that because I don't think I had the encounter with the Phasmid. And kind of your piece, at least when we were talking about it, your piece kind of, like, one of the statements it makes is, like, this encounter really contextualizes a lot of the game and a lot of the game's thinking about, like, capital S stuff.
Yeah.
And so one of the questions I was posing to you was like, well, what happens if the player just doesn't have that encounter? And I don't know where we landed. I think at the time we didn't necessarily know how optional the encounter was, like whether or not any of it would get you would get force fed. But obviously after our playthrough, you can just not have it. It can just be something you completely miss due to a 3% chance.
Not really, though. You did encounter it.
You encounter it, but you don't get this conversation about human thought being the enemy of the world, being the ultimate form of human waste.
Yeah, I think it still... I don't know. I mean, I think I'm a hardliner on it in the sense that I think it still does that work, even though the explanation isn't fully there. Meaning that I think that the imagery and then the context, right, which is that the thing that you believe... This thing that is mysterious and, beyond the human, right? Xeno-humanistic. I don't know. I don't know the appropriate word for it, right? This thing that, if you follow down the right pathway, or even if you don't, right? I didn't get the rest of the conversation with the cryptozoologists, right? I got locked out of that. But even in the as far as I got into it this time, you still have this thing of this vibe of these two people believe in something that has no proof in the world other than basically the feeling of a 5-year-old, right? The memory of a 5-year-old. And in the final moments of confronting the past history, right? The communard sniper. And watching it break down and being surrendered to, in that moment, you encounter the numinous, right? The thing beyond the human that is truly, unthinkable in some ways. And importantly, the way you talk to the Phasmid, this is something if I were writing this piece again, right? I think I would think about it a little bit more, is that the Phasmid, Inland Empire as an ability is some sort of like intra-psyche narration. Yeah. And repeatedly in the game, you have the option of asking, well, am I just talking to myself when I'm like asking or accessing Inland Empire? And so I think in some ways Inland Empire and having the conversation with the Phasmid, I think it gives you more information kind of in a general sense about the world, capital I information. But I don't think it really changes the meaning one way or the other, which is that against the backdrop of history, history giving us whiplash in this entire case, right? Of the past, hauntologically coming back to get us. Against that, there's still a massive backdrop of the unknown, the unthinkable, the unaccessible that we only get glimmers of as a species. And for me, that's just like all Cormac McCarthy shit, right? Like, and I don't say that to be like blah Cormac McCarthy, but that the material of the earth is the guarantor of time beyond the human. And I think that's at the core of the game. Just, I think that's only been strengthened playing it through again.
Do you feel, just here's a big question. Do you agree with this or not? Is some of the, I think that this is, Disco Elysium was too afraid of sincerity to be revolutionary. That was a piece by Colin Spetchet-Twinks. It's
good. It's funny. It's still funny. Yeah, it's again, the links to these things will be down in the description below.
So kind of a thrust here is that there is this, we kind of use terms like South Park to describe this like complete ironic detachment, this idea of the game seems to have an allergic reaction to sincerity. There's always a little asterisk behind any kind of statement that, when you look down at the end of the page, it basically says, but this is all bullshit. We know it's all bullshit, right?
Yeah.
There seems to be two kind of competing, and maybe this is actually just one thing, but there seems kind of be like, there are two defenses to this. Like if you wanted to defend the game and say, well, no, it's not merely that the game has this stance of complete and utter detachment and cynicism. One, the protagonist and the entity through which you experience the game is a man just utterly enveloped by a horrific case of depression and like suicidal depression and substance abuse, etc. So that's one. So like you have to like keep that in mind in all of your like experiences, in all of like these super acerbic conclusions to everything in the thought cabinet. Like it doesn't matter whether it's communism or fascism or whatever. Like it seems like the resolving action of anything in the thought cabinet is just but it's all bullshit and I'm depressed. So you have to keep it in mind that this entity you're playing, you don't get to opt out of the depression. You're there. And then the second one, which is something you may or may not experience depending on an electrochemistry roll, is you meet an entity outside of human thought, you interact with it, and through Inland Empire, which another big caveat here, maybe this is just all coming from you. I don't buy that, and I'll tell you why in a second. But
because that guy's behind the diner in that David Lynch movie.
Yeah, because the guy is behind the diner, or because Inland Empire actually does solve the case the second you see the corpse, right?
That's true.
How
would you know other than it being true? So
exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
But the Phasmid does tell you, all that nonsense rattling around in your thought cabinet, it's awful. That is the ultimate evil of the universe. All this shit is bad. And your participation in it is obviously involuntary until you commit suicide. And the fact that you are just generating these thoughts and you keep filling up that thought cabinet, you are just like spewing horrific toxic waste into the world. So these are the two ways that I think the game can defend itself from accusations of political cynicism. And maybe they are just one way, but I once again, I reject the synthesis of Inland Empire being entirely internal because of communism killed me. Right?
Yeah, it at least gives you enough. And I guess, too, that I didn't do it. I never tried to do it, but you can also convince Kim that there's a big sexy mystery underneath with Inland Empire. And so, it's really weird that that's not a rhetoric thing. I will say this, too, that the additional thing, I think maybe, someone listening to this, because I certainly had the thought, and then immediately, sutured the thought up while you were talking, but about how can it be both, like what I just said, which is this deeply, melancholic reflection on the relationship between the human and the natural world, right? This, I think that one thing that we can say about Cormac McCarthy in that kind of comparison I made is that Cormac McCarthy is a deeply sincere writer. And you might not come to good conclusions necessarily all the time, but I think he is certainly very serious and truthful, at least to his experience of things. And I don't necessarily agree with them when he gets there. But how could it be that and also South Parky, right? And I think that there's a little bit of the, this is what basically everyone talks about when they're talking about this game. I don't know if I've written about it, but the Disco Elysium devs, when the game came out, released kind of a list of here's things this is in conversation with. Here's stuff that we were thinking about, right? And almost all of them have this relationship. So one of them is True Detective. So this is a good example of that, right? I'm going to spoil True Detective over the next 5 minutes or so. True Detective, Rust Cole and Woody Harrelson. I don't remember that guy's name.
Rust Cole and...
Yep.
Oh, I remember there's a... so Cole, it's it's dark, but it actually burns brightly with truth. And then I can't remember. There was an interesting literary interpretation of Woody Harrelson's name.
Jeff. Burns like a Jeff. No. But anyway, so the shot, right?
Hart. Marty Hart.
Blood. That's my feeling on that. But the whole shot of True Detective, right, is that there is Rust Cole is a character who can do what needs to be done, quote unquote, right? Make all the hard decisions. And he's like a deep nihilist. But that ultimately enables him to do the thing that to kill the serial killer at the end, or defeat the serial killer. And then in the last moments of the show, or the last 20 minutes or so, he almost dies, and then he has this kind of experience, right, where he is describing the warm heart of the universe, right, where his dead daughter is, and all this kind of stuff. And has a complete change of heart, right? That, there is not a vast nothing. There's, in fact, a something. And that something is so affecting as to radically change your life when you are run up against it.
It's a change of heart, but it's also, it incorporates, I think it folds into his understanding of belief, because I do think that the show is trying to say, in order to truly appreciate the something, you must first live admitting the nothing.
Yeah, and this goes 100%. I think, or I don't think you have to admit the nothing, but you have to confront the nothing.
You have to confront the nothing, yes.
And, this is something that's right in existentialist literature. It's an absurdism. It goes all the way back to Job, right? Who are you? Literally, who are you to ask, the storm?
Who are you to question or to even reveal the tricks of the Guild of Magic?
Exactly. So that's all to say that I think, and if you look at the list of their references, one thing that Jacob Geller brings out in that video that I mentioned before is the city in the city, the China Miéville thing. Mm-hmm. It's very similar, right? Cop has to come to the realization that the world is not as he believes it is, right? And there's in fact a difficult synthetic thing beneath the structure of the world that he lives in. So all of these things, for me, as a kind of reader and very familiar with a large amount of the stuff that they're in reference to, they all have a very similar structure, right? Which is that it's the nightmare of existence, and then that dialectically smashes into something in the world that cannot fold in neatly, right, without changing yourself into this nihilistic view of the world. And so then, therefore, you come out of that perhaps more whole. And I think both characters, both playthroughs that we had, we came out more whole from the whole encounter. It just kind of depends on, the political upshot of it, right? You just went back and bullied everyone into doing whatever you wanted them to.
My personality was so all-encompassingly toxic that any attempt to interact with me invariably taints one, right? Mm-hmm. so but I don't know how else to interpret my ending.
Yeah, so that's all to say, right? I think that the phasmid, is exactly what I said before. It's this kind of symbolic, representation of the guarantor of something bigger than the human. And I think you get it in your playthrough, even though you only see it for a moment. I just think there's different degrees to which it gets to speak, if that makes sense. Different degrees to which we are forced to engage or asked to engage with that symbol. I think it's still there no matter what. And I don't think it's possible to get there. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is you always see the phasmid. Yes. It just depends on what you do with the phasmid.
No, I think that you can completely not engage with the cryptozoologists and still see the phasmid, which I think would be rad. I would love to I might actually play this game just to see if I could do that. If never talk to Moral, never talk to anyone, and never mention the phasmid, and just see how the character, how it strikes the character at the end.
Can you complete the game without engaging with them, though?
Sure.
Just by stacking shivers?
Oh, absolutely.
And the reason I say that, I guess it has to be possible. The reason I say that is that the cryptozoologists gate 3 of the possible quests, right, for the shivers check at the wall. And so you were really heavily incentivized to talk to them. Yeah, maybe give it another shot. I bet you can speedrun this game really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Just go sit on that bench the whole time. Sit on that bench for 3 days and then go to the end of the game.
Mm-hmm. Here's what's wild. What happens if you go and confront Ruby before you get the corpse down?
I don't know.
It's just wild questions. Also, I did start playing the game because I just wanted to know what the other option to get the body down looks like. Mm-hmm. And Measurehead is the person that Claire sends to get the body down, and Measurehead just rips down the branch.
Huh.
Which really makes me wonder. I almost want to play it again to see what happens if I knock out Measurehead and then talk to Claire. Does Claire still send Measurehead to get the body down for me?
I mean, I think this is the benefit of the game, right? Is that this has all been thought through.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess that's what you were saying at the beginning, too. But
I know, and I think you're, just to finish your thought there, because it's one that just really occurred to me, is like, I think it might just be a testament to... It might just be a testament to how much thought was put into it, because when you're experiencing the consequences of a choice, it's well enough thought out and written that it feels like there's no way they could have put this much energy into anything else.
Yeah. And I think that has to do with a long development time. Mm-hmm. They had a big staff of writers, too. I mean, big for a game like this. I think there are 5 or 6 writers total.
Mm-hmm.
So, they had the kind of capability to do that, to stretch. It's probably out by the time that people are hearing this, and if it is, I'll put a link down below. But for the journal Science Fiction, Film, and Television, I've been co-editing a issue on science fiction games, and so we did some interviews with some practitioners for that. And one was Meghna Jayanth, who was the writer of 80 Days, done a bunch of other stuff as well. But the reason I bring up 80 Days specifically is that we were talking a little bit about how many words that has, and she said that it's a little bit more than The Lord of the Rings and a little bit less of a song than A Song of Ice and Fire, I think. And she wrote all these words. But the average player only sees like 5%. I don't have the number in front of me, but something like 5% in a playthrough. And every playthrough feels complete in the same way that Disco Elysium kind of does, right? Like, it feels like you're on a path where you've made important choices, but, everything kind of hangs together in an important way. Mm-hmm. And so I think that part of kind of a big development in games writing in a general sense is looking at the past 20 years of games and thinking, what are the things that I wish had felt a little bit more fulfilling or a little bit more filled in or a little bit more... thought through, right? Mm-hmm. And then dedicating resources to that as a first principle rather than as something down the line, right? So rather than having one person like crunch out 1 billion words, what does it mean when we build a game that is built around words? And I think that Disco Elysium is built around words in the same way that 80 Days is. Ultimately, the skill system is just about giving you more access to different kinds of words.
Yeah.
And same with the thought cabinet. But anyway, I just wanted to say that I think that that's something that's happening around indie, games writing right now that's very exciting, mm-hmm. is that the plurality of the space is so large that each kind of iteration and each attempt through it, experimenting with the different choices, really does give different options as opposed to like a Mass Effect or something like that where, who cares? I mean, that's how I feel at the end. I'm like, oh, okay, who cares? Like, it doesn't really matter. I think I have a different relationship to those games than some other people do.
Is that after you spend 40 hours talking about it on like season 9 of Too Much Future, are you going to just, hey, feel free to listen to Mages and Murderdads episode 74 for my...
That's a very interesting question because I think Too Much Future never goes beyond Fallout. I don't think, right? I think, and I haven't talked with Michael about this. It's just off the cuff thinking. It's a show about Fallout, and when we're done with Fallout, we're going to wait for a new Fallout game. I think Mages and Murderdads is more likely to go to Mass Effect, weirdly enough. So you can call me out on episode like 111.
I'll remember too.
When we've only finished Baldur's Gate 3. Basically, episodes 75 through 111 are going to be Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah. Okay, well, you'll know I'll remember. I remember every piece of hypocrisy you've ever done.
I know.
And you deny 75% of it.
Because you can't prove it. I've edited it out.
It's 100% true. The only 25% you admit is the stuff I just have absolute hardcore evidence of.
Well, I'm going to edit that out too. I'll leave this part in, but I'll edit out the thing that I said that you can point out my potential hypocrisy in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, in the future when I'm like, when Garrus, when he shot that can out of the air, and I had the option to talk to him and be his bro.
I've never played any of these games. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, that's a thing that can happen.
Okay.
You can go can shooting with your bro at one point. Hey, you know what? This is a thing. This doesn't really have anything to do with Mages and Murderdads, but I'm going to put it in here anyway. We talked at some point about how the special editions of Mass Effect are coming out, or remastered editions, and you should wait. Remember, I told you, hey, just wait.
That's right.
They're coming out.
Oh, is it real?
Yeah, in like a couple months.
It's going to be on the PS5?
I don't know.
Okay.
You now know exactly all I know about it.
Gotcha. That's a complete mind meld that we just did. This is the silliest mind meld.
Yeah, okay. Well, what else? What other big ideas? I mean, here, I said I would talk about this in the last episode, and I talked about it a little bit. I'm going to say it again here. I played through this game as a fascist racist. Mm-hmm. I don't think the game pays that off in any way.
No, it really had like 17 opportunities to.
Yeah. I think that unless I somehow beefed it up and there is a big payoff that I just somehow missed by like not doing it enough. But, when Kim calls me a giant fascist at the end and like there's no repercussion for that. Sure. And like I said last time, I've actually really thought about it since the last time we recorded, right? And I thought, this is repeating a little bit of what I said last episode, but there's a way of reading this that is like, okay, this is a critique of policing, right? You can, in fact, be all these bad things and still be a police officer. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like a perfectly valid reading, but I don't think they do any of the work to like make that clear.
Oh, that's all player doing that.
Yeah, if that's there, it's subtext and not text. And for the amount of effort that this game goes through to make so much stuff text rather than subtext, I just don't think that's like there's not enough oomph there to make me think that is I don't know, strongly intended. I think it maybe is just latent in the thing. So yeah, I don't have the author right in front of me again, the writer of the piece for Fanbyte where they went through and played it as a racist fascist. I do agree that in the mid game, that the game is often, kind of treating you. It's treating you like a racist uncle, right? Like this imaginary fictional figure that everyone talks about around Thanksgiving on Twitter, or the racist uncle,
the mytho-historical racist uncle.
Yes, right. Who you just have to like get through it, right? With, and I think there's this almost like benign, like Kim can't abandon you. And so he just has to put up with it.
Well, I mean, here's. I know you've already pushed back against this narrative of the criticism of police, but in some ways, the protagonist, Harry Dubois, occupies the same sociological space as the racist uncle, because the racist uncle must be tolerated because you have no power to stop him, right? Yeah. Because. Look, he is invited to Thanksgiving no matter what. You have no leverage over your family's invitation. Harry Dubois is the highest ranking police officer we meet in this game, I'm pretty sure. I think that it is fair that he is higher ranking than his partner that shows up at the end.
Jean Vicmar?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know why in the hundreds of video game characters I can't remember their names of. I remember Jean Vicmar.
And you remember Trant.
Yeah, I also remember Trant. Let me tell you here, too, in the middle of this, that I really strongly thought about creating a new segment on this show called Trant Time, where I just talk about Trant for a while, and then I thought, I don't know what I would talk about in Trant Time, so I didn't do it.
I think Trant Time isn't talking about Trant. I think Trant Time is you role-playing Trant and talking about whatever we're talking about in the game as Trant. Like, you basically channeling Trant and explaining something.
But yeah, I thought about both of these things for like since we recorded that last episode. I was like, what would Trant time, like what would the bit be like? And I couldn't get there. Something I thought was good enough. But it's a little peek behind the curtain of product development over here at Range Touch, where I think about Trant time and it just doesn't, and then I don't have anything. But anyway, sorry. But
you're right,
highest ranking officer.
So really, no one can stop you. You outright Kim, and Kim is an institutionalist.
I think all of the evidence for the reading is there. And if someone came to that conclusion, I would not say that they are wrong. I think it's a valid reading of the thing. And yet, against the backdrop of so many things in this game being so in your face.
The game's working so hard on so many different work sites.
Everywhere else.
You just want them to pick up one shovel on the racism mound.
Exactly. And I don't know why this would be the place where you wouldn't pick up the shovel, right? To like strongly condemn it.
I mean, how would you feel? And this is really lazy question making. I know that these kind of hypotheticals are just useless, but I just want to get a peek into your emotional state, into a hypothetical emotional state.
Okay.
How would you feel if during the shootout, after being a racist, there is this moment where Kim shoots the guy through the helmet because he's about to shoot you, and he aims and then looks at you and just smiles a little bit, and then you can see him like lower his gun before you're shot, and basically you always die because of your racism. and the death screen is the newspaper headline, and it's interviewing Kim, and he says, yeah, he died in that shootout, it sucks, but he was a huge racist.
I mean, I think that would be okay. I think the reason they didn't do that, and like I can't imagine in a world in which so many things were thought of in this game that they didn't at least entertain an idea of your relationship with Kim being bad enough that he just lets you take a hit. And maybe that's in the game. I don't know, right? I ended up having, weirdly enough, I think we figured out, my relationship with Kim was pretty good. So maybe that's in there in the shootout. I don't know. I don't think you should have him look at the character and smile a little bit, because I think that plays into a racial stereotype in some ways. That might be a little bit justifying, but I do think that having Kim hesitate or whatever, right? That might do it. And weirdly enough, I mean, running back into the problem, or not problem, but what we talked about last time is that I got a bonus for my relationship with Kim to help Kim roll out of the way of being shot. So, I think maybe, well, I don't know. I think the game is trying to demonstrate the reality, the complexity of actual real world life, which is that you could have a good relationship with someone who you are passively and aggressively racist toward all the time. I'm sure that happens all the time in the world, because human life is fucked up and weird, right? Like, I get it. And I applaud the desire for complexity. But I think in a game that is so willing to just do the work in so many other places, I would have liked to see more work here. That's all I'm saying. I think I would have liked to see some comeuppance here, because I think, like I was saying a few minutes ago, I think the game does do a lot of work to chide you, right? In the same way that you might chide that racist uncle, but it doesn't really judge you. And I think that maybe the game should judge you on this one.
Still the best storytelling in a game. I think this was kind of like more or less said in some of the, I don't know, I think you've said this to me, some of the best storytelling in a video game. Yeah,
as far as like laying out the tracks and then actually like pulling it through. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm also a little bit worried, I wrote about this in one of my pieces that I wrote about the game for Waypoint. I'm a little bit worried that this game becomes like the marker of good quality writing, in the same way that Planescape Torment became the marker of good quality writing. And I've seen this said a lot of times, right? Like in public discourse, that like this is now the game with the good writing. And it's precisely woof, because of its inability to judge sometimes, and its ability or its desire to present, complexity, the Kuno or Measurehead, and that kind of like, you deal with the real world, bro. like, what about this? This is the real kind of stuff in the world. I think this game handles that as deftly as you can, right? I think it does a very good job of trying to demonstrate complexity and ultimately giving you a lot of tools to fight back against those people. Maybe not when you're doing it yourself in the game, but certainly to respond to those people. To back up Kim against the racist lorry driver or whatever. I am afraid that... afraid is not the right word. I have the feeling that...
You are terrified.
I'm terrified. I'm literally shaking in my boots. I am scared. I'm writing letters to people. I don't leave my house. I've got a can with a string attached to another can. I'm in the treehouse. My wife's down in the house by itself. We're communicating that way. I'm eating baked beans cooked over a camp stove. Utterly shooketh. But my concern, I guess, is in the next couple years we get another kind of Disco Elysium that is not as talented and can't sink the shot, and yet goes for all the same pieces. Because I think it is very tempting to try to make a game after you've played Disco Elysium. I think it's tempting to make a game like Disco Elysium.
Sure. I think that one of the things you've said is kind of... You applaud the game for having some of the best storytelling, but it's almost like the fact that it had some of the best storytelling, it's like, okay, well, that's now the Planescape Torment. That is now the benchmark.
Yep.
And everything is going to get compared to it. And like it now kind of occupies a space in not only game making, but maybe game criticism that will basically warp the future in the same way that those communists destroying the digital computer warped history in Disco Elysium. That it will be this thing, and it seems like that's kind of melded with your concern about the way in which it's engaging with a lot of charged issues.
Yeah, I think so. And maybe I'm wrong, right? Like, that's the kind of like speculative cold shot that, maybe it's just wrong.
You'll edit it out in 5 years if you're wrong.
Yeah, if in 5 years, if I'm wrong, I'm going to come back to this one. I'm going to edit it out. Be on the lookout for the upload and come back and watch it again so it keeps the numbers up. But, maybe I'm wrong about that, right? And certainly in the year since, I haven't seen nearly as many comparisons to it as I thought I would. So maybe I'm just wrong. I don't know. But also, Noah Caldwell-Gervais calls it a modern classic. So, I think, and that is not something, or that language is something I've seen shared. And I've seen a lot of comparison to it, not in written criticism necessarily, but kind of colloquially. I see a lot of people talking about other games, when I'm looking at Reddit or whatever. I see it come up on kind of what I would consider like the broad consumer end, and less on the kind of critic end. So who knows? I don't know. It's a cold shot and a concern.
Is another concerning thing the idea that this, I think, in spite of all odds, Noah in the oh gosh, what was the title of the video essay? Judicial Opinions. Noah kind of paints a picture of the game as this long shot that made it, right? And is another concerning thing that like the cynicism and the detached irony is kind of almost a necessary component of something like this being incredibly popular, because in a world where it did take a stronger stance, like Colin kind of laments that it didn't, there's no way it could be that popular.
Maybe
in the same way that like Range Touch for some reason doesn't have Joe Rogan's listenership.
Yes, because an absolute open credulity to all things. The willingness to entertain what bad stuff. I was trying to think of a better way to phrase that, but the willingness to entertain it gives at least an entree into the full thing. Is kind of what you're asking. Yeah, I think so. I think the idea of like all it takes all comers, right?
Sure.
Up to a certain point. And I do think that it gives you the ability to... The game is judgy about some things more than others. Yeah. Yes, I think so. I don't know if that is exactly is the reason why we don't have Joe Rogan's numbers. I don't think that's exactly the case.
Look, I am constantly just scratching my head coming up with random hypotheses. So that's just put another one on the pile.
You know, kind of like how, Einstein was sitting in the patent office and...
said, God doesn't play dice with the universe.
No, I think he was listening to some bells from across town and trying to figure out why they sounded further away or why they happened at different times if they were ringing at the same moment. But, and then he thought, I got to think up general relativity. You're sitting at the undisclosed underground bunker and you're thinking, why am I not more popular? And it's the same kind of genius at work in both cases.
And it's just me with my it's a scroll, actually. It's just one long piece of paper, and the most recent thing I've got down there, aside from this that I just said, was more chimps? ?
Okay, well, what else? Other big thoughts here? I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, I'm glad we did it too. I think that here's a big question. Is this just gonna, we came back, Mages and Murderdads, rise from the ashes, come back, does Disco Elysium, plays the game you claim to be kind of setting a new standard for storytelling in games. We both claim. Was this a mistake?
Playing this game?
Yeah, well, is it a mistake in the long term if the idea is, we'll just follow this season up. We know we're going to do Baldur's Gate 3. We promised we would do it. Pillars of Eternity might be in the mix. There might be other things floating around.
No, I don't think it's a mistake in the sense that, Pillars of Eternity is just a different kind of game, right? Like, it's a different kind of universe, different kind of genre expectations.
Sure.
And I mean that both in the sense of game genre, and I think this game is just much closer to like a visual novel or an adventure game than it really is like an RPG, even though it is in the isometric RPG universe. I just think it's different, and I think that we'll have different... I don't think we're ever... Personally, I don't think we're going to be playing Pillars of Eternity and being like, I just wish it had the voluminous depth of Disco Elysium. I think we're going to be like, hell yeah, that dude is a wizard.
It's true. No, and thinking back, I just think that our content on Baldur's Gate 3 will be every episode having a little feature of like, this is the weird thing that the jump action did this episode.
Yeah. Oh, so I've been keeping up with that a little bit, and they've changed up jump a little bit. They've tried to even that out or fix some of those rough edges. I've been looking at the updates for Baldur's Gate 3 just to see what's been coming down the pipeline, and there's some interesting stuff. They've added more story stuff to the first act apparently at this point, so I think it might actually have like an ending thing to it now, as opposed to just be over or just run out of shit to do. But yeah. But yeah, I don't know. What anything else? Any other big stuff that you've been ruminating on for the week?
Yeah, here's another thing. You've completely, I think the technical term is shat upon my whole account of how nothing happens in the game. Lo and behold, I navigate to your Vice piece, and you're talking about these cool cats. Deleuze and Guattari, and talking about how the novella was organized not around the question of what will happen, but instead what happened. So yeah, you agree with me. Nothing happened.
It sounds like you ripped me
a game
off.
About...
It sounds like you took exactly what I wrote and then filed the numbers off.
And then you criticized it.
So that's dialectics, baby! Woo! But
I just pictured you dressed as Ric Flair.
yeah, I am in all white. I've got huge tassels coming off of my arms, and I'm doing finger guns in the air, hooting and hollering about it. No. I mean, I think that I don't disagree with you that it is about reflecting on what happened. I disagree with the idea that nothing happened in the plot of the game until the end of it. because we did all kinds of stuff, and like all kinds of side quests happened, but those are predicated on what happened.
That's true.
Yeah. Don't try to fold my idea into your bad idea. My idea is good. Your idea?
That's dialectics, baby.
That's in fact dialectics. Your idea, bad. My idea, excellent. Let's fold them together and let me win. And I think we all agree that I'm the smart one.
I do think that there was a moment in a Mages and Murderdads earlier where you uttered the phrase "Imperial Core," and I just had to kind of turn to you, sir. This is Mages and Murderdads.
This is a Wendy's.
This isn't your other show where it's two PhDs talking for 5 hours.
What? Hold on. We don't talk for 5 hours. We talk for 3 hours. Oh no, you're right. What else?
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, me
That's
too.
all. It's a fun game. I think that it makes you think. I think that you don't have to endorse every decision it makes in order to like consume the piece of media. I do think that the game suits definitely a critical stance going towards it. I don't think that the game is hyper defensive, if that makes sense. I do think that there's a way to like portray some of this stuff and from a poise of like deep vulnerability and do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that the game is inviting criticism as it plays.
Yeah, it has an ambivalence about a lot of its positions, which is really interesting based on how it gets talked about as a political game, and obviously their kind of Game Awards thing of shouting out Karl Marx and all of that. The text itself, without that context, is, I think, a little bit more ambivalent about everything. Okay, well, I think that's it. I think that's what we got.
That's it. What game's next?
I don't know. Let's keep our eye on the ball as far as where Baldur's Gate 3 is. I don't think that thing's not coming out this year, right?
Oh God, that's 2023.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way that's coming. So maybe we'll look at Disco Elysium, or not Disco Elysium. Maybe let's do it. Let's just do Disco Elysium one more time. Easy. I'm just going to
play opposite characters.
No. I'll just review my footage and then we'll just talk about it again.
See, in the early days of Range Touch, we could commit to a bit like that.
Where we just did it.
We could commit to a bit of like a show where each season is just iterative. You're just looking at the same footage from the previous season. Or, season 8 of Mages and Murderdads is us watching season 7 of Mages and Murderdads and talking about it.
On one hand, very funny. On the other hand, I would kick my own ass. There is an episode of You Talking You2 to me, I think, the Earwolf podcast, in which they listen to, it's like episode 10 or something, and the episode is them listening to the first episode and then commenting on it, instead of listening to like a U2 album. So, there's precedent in the world. I don't know. Maybe Pillars of Eternity. We need to look at how long that would take, really.
Yeah, is Pillars of Eternity like a BG2 size game?
Let's look at how long. Let's look at how long to beat. So that helps, to give us an idea. Pillars of Eternity. It's probably like 80 hours, not 35.
Oh yeah.
It says main plus extra 61. I'm assuming that's with DLC or something.
Yeah.
Oh no, the DLC is counted separately, and that's an extra 8 hours. So.
So extra must be side quest.
Yeah, I'm assuming. Yeah, main story 35, main and extra 61. I mean, I can probably get that.
So you probably like cut it in the middle and say it's like a 42-hour game.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. I don't know if we're ready to dig right into that. We'll figure it out. I'm not.
Yeah.
This is going to, I don't know, probably stretch out into June or something as far as the posting schedule is concerned. So I think we got plenty of time. Okay, well, that's the end of the episode. What's the famous catchphrase?
You better watch out.
Is that it?
Ciao.